Arslan Malik, 32 years old, was a man admired by many for his charm, confidence, and successful business ventures. But beneath the polished suit and easy smile, he carried a flaw that would one day destroy everything he had built. On the morning of the most important day of his life, his wedding day, he stood at the edge of a decision that could either preserve his carefully crafted image or expose the darkest truth he had been hiding. Should he confess his betrayal before the ceremony began? Should he walk away from a marriage built on lies? Or would karma find its own way to make him pay? The sunlight streamed through the tall, arched windows of the Malik family mansion, spilling golden light across the marbled floor. Servants bustled about, their hurried footsteps echoing down the polished halls, while relatives chattered with excitement in every corner. The air was thick with the fragrance of roses and jasmine, mixed with the faint aroma of tea being served in delicate china cups. It was a day of celebration, a day everyone had been waiting for, the wedding of Arslan Malik and the gentle, kind-hearted Maywish Ali. Maywish, at 26, was known for her simplicity and sincerity. She had a calm presence that comforted those around her. Where Arslan's charm dazzled and captivated, Maywish's quiet grace anchored and soothed. Together, they were supposed to represent balance, fire and water, ambition and peace. But only Maywish believed in the purity of their bond. Arslan, standing before the mirror in his embroidered sherwani, adjusted the collar with steady hands. Outwardly, he looked every bit the confident groom. Inwardly, his heart pounded. His reflection seemed to accuse him, reminding him of the woman he had been secretly meeting for months, Zara. Zara, bold and fearless, had been his colleague once, sharp-tongued and unapologetically ambitious. What began as harmless conversations had spiraled into something forbidden. And though Arslan told himself he was only seeking excitement before marriage, the guilt had begun to gnaw at him in ways he could no longer ignore. The sound of laughter drifted in from the courtyard, where children ran between tables draped in crimson and gold. Relatives from faraway cities had gathered, their faces glowing with anticipation. The Malik family name carried weight, and this wedding was not just a union, it was a statement of power, wealth, and prestige. Everyone is waiting outside. Are you ready? Came a knock at the door. It was Arslan's younger brother, Fahad. Arslan forced a smile. Yes, almost. But as he slipped the ring box into his pocket, his mind flashed to Zara's last words, whispered only 2 nights ago when he met her in secret. You think you can just leave me, Arslan? After everything? Do you think I'll stay quiet while you marry someone else? He had laughed it off then, dismissing her threat. But now, as the weight of the day pressed down on him, her words replayed like a curse. Meanwhile, in another part of the mansion, Maywish sat quietly in her bridal chamber. The room glowed with soft lights, her lehenga shimmering like fire beneath them. Her friends teased and giggled, fixing her jewelry, but Maywish's eyes were on the door. She had always trusted Arslan, believed in his promises of loyalty. And yet, in recent weeks, she had felt something distant in his behavior, a hesitation in his words, a shadow in his smile. Her cousin Aisha noticed her distraction. Maywish, why do you look worried? This is your big day. Every girl dreams of this moment. Maywish smiled faintly. Yes, every girl does. I hope I am enough for him. Aisha laughed it off, but the unease in Maywish's chest remained. She couldn't explain why, but a quiet voice inside her whispered that something was not right. The ceremony began with grandeur. Guests filled the decorated hall, cameras flashed, and the stage gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Arslan walked in with his family, the picture of pride and dignity, while Maywish was led in with grace, her head bowed under the weight of tradition and beauty. The hall buzzed with admiration. Compliments flew in every direction about the bride's elegance, the groom's stature, the magnificence of the event. But amidst the cheers and blessings, a sudden disturbance broke the rhythm. From the back of the hall, a woman's voice rang out, loud and unshaken. Arslan Malik! Stop this wedding right now! Gasps filled the room. Heads turned sharply. At the entrance stood Zara, dressed in a simple but striking outfit, her eyes blazing with fury. In her hand, she held her phone, its screen lit with messages, pictures, and proof of the affair. The crowd erupted into whispers. Who is she? What's happening? Maywish froze, her heart thundering in her chest. Her gaze darted to Arslan, whose face had gone pale. For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Zara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the hall. You think you can cheat me, use me, and then stand here pretending to be the perfect groom? Do you want me to show them the truth? Do you want me to play the recordings? The hall fell into stunned silence. Parents exchanged horrified glances. Guests held their breath, waiting. Arslan clenched his fists, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Zara, this isn't the place. Please leave. But Zara only raised her phone higher. No, this is exactly the place. Everyone deserves to know what kind of man you really are. Maywish's lips trembled. Her world, which only minutes ago felt safe and beautiful, now felt like glass shattering around her. She looked at Arslan, silently pleading for an explanation. Arslan, is this true? Her voice cracked, barely audible, yet everyone heard. Arslan opened his mouth, but no words came. His silence screamed louder than any confession. The elders of the family rushed to intervene, trying to usher Zara out, but the damage was already done. Whispers had turned into judgmental stares. The proud Malik reputation now teetered on the edge of ruin. Fahad stepped close to his brother, his voice low but firm. Bhai, what have you done? Arslan's throat tightened. His perfect image was slipping, and for the first time, he realized he might not be able to control the storm he had unleashed. Zara's eyes burned with both pain and vengeance. You ruined my life, Arslan. Today, I'll ruin yours. The screen of her phone lit up with a video thumbnail. One click, and the whole hall would see the truth. Arslan's heart pounded. Maywish's tears welled. The hall was silent, waiting for the next move. The hall was frozen in silence. Zara stood tall, her phone raised like a weapon, her voice steady as she looked directly at Arslan. The whispers had grown into a storm of murmurs, and the proud Malik family now found itself drowning in humiliation. Arslan's father, Malik Jamil, clenched his jaw and rose from his seat, his eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and disbelief. What nonsense is this? He demanded. Who are you to walk into our family's event and cause such disgrace? Zara turned her gaze to him, unflinching. Ask your son, Malik Sahib. He knows me very well. Too well. A gasp rippled across the crowd, and all eyes shifted back to Arslan, who stood stiff, his hand twitching at his side, unable to form a single defense. Maywish's hands trembled on her lap, her bridal bangles jingling with the movement. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Her heart was beating so fast she could barely breathe. The man she trusted, the man she was about to marry, the man she had believed to be her protector and companion, was he truly guilty of such betrayal? Arslan finally stepped forward, his voice breaking as he tried to salvage his dignity. Zara, please. Don't do this here. You're angry. We can talk in private. But Zara only laughed bitterly, a sharp sound that cut through the tense silence. Private? You wanted everything to be private. You wanted me hidden, like a shameful secret, while you smiled for the cameras and promised loyalty to her. She pointed toward Maywish, her hand shaking but her words fierce. She deserves to know who she is marrying. And I will not let you lie to her anymore. Maywish's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, Arslan, why aren't you denying it? Her question hung in the air, echoing in the heavy silence. Arslan's throat tightened. He looked at her, then at his father, then at the hundreds of eyes staring at him, waiting. The weight of his lies crushed down on him. His lips parted, but still, no denial came. The silence was the confession. Malik Jamil's fury erupted. He slammed his fist on the table. You bring shame to this family, Arslan. His voice thundered, and even the children in the hall fell quiet, staring wide-eyed. We raised you with honor, and this is what you do? To humiliate us on this day, in front of the world? Zara, her voice trembling with emotion now, continued, I gave you my trust, Arslan. I believed your promises. You said you loved me, that you would never let me go. And yet, here you are, marrying another woman as if I never existed. Do you think my heart is made of stone? She raised the phone again, her finger hovering over the screen. Shall I show them the truth? Shall I play the recordings? The crowd leaned forward, desperate for the spectacle. Some guests whispered cruelly, some looked at Maywish with pity, while others watched with a mixture of horror and curiosity. Fahad, unable to bear the humiliation, stepped between Zara and his brother. Enough, he snapped. Zara, whatever happened between you and Arslan, this is not the place. You're ruining Maywish's life by doing this here. Do you not see her? His voice cracked with emotion as he gestured toward the bride. She is innocent in all of this. For the first time, Zara's expression faltered. Her anger dimmed for a moment as her eyes landed on Maywish, sitting there in her heavy bridal clothes, her face pale, her eyes glistening with tears that had not yet fallen. Maywish looked fragile, almost like a flower about to be crushed by a storm. Zara's lips trembled, but then she hardened her resolve. If I stay silent, she will still be crushed later when she finds out the truth herself. Better she knows now, than after it's too late. Maywish finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, but steady enough to carry across the hall. Arslan, tell me the truth. Just once. Did you betray me? Arslan felt as though the world was closing in on him. His knees weakened. He wanted to deny, to spin another lie, to beg for time. But his voice came out low and hoarse. Maywish. I made a mistake. The hall gasped again. A mistake. Just 2 words, but they shattered her completely. She closed her eyes, tears spilling over her cheeks. A sharp pain pierced her chest as if her very soul was breaking apart. A mistake? Was her love a mistake? Was her trust a mistake? She had waited, dreamed, prayed for this marriage, and now, on the very day of her union, it was all ashes. Zara's eyes filled with tears now as well, but hers burned with vindication. There it is. The truth from his own mouth. She looked around at the hall. Now tell me, Malik family, is this the man you want to celebrate today? Malik Jamil stood, his face red with fury. Get out, he roared at Zara. Get out of my house this instant, before I... But before he could finish, Maywish rose from her seat. The heavy bridal veil slid off her head, falling to the floor like a discarded dream. Her voice was soft, but it silenced the hall. No, uncle. Let her speak. She is not the one who betrayed me. She is not the one who lied. She turned to Arslan, her tear-streaked face filled with quiet strength. It is you, Arslan. You broke me before we even began. You destroyed everything before it could even start. The crowd murmured louder, their whispers turning into harsh judgment for Arslan. Some shook their heads, some muttered words of disgust. The proud groom, once admired, now stood exposed as a liar and a cheat. Arslan stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. Maywish, please, forgive me. I was foolish. It meant nothing. You are the one I want. Please don't let this end like this. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back sharply, her bangles clinking. Don't touch me, she whispered fiercely, her voice shaking. You speak of forgiveness, but you never once thought of my dignity, my trust, my heart. What kind of marriage begins with betrayal? What kind of man begins his vows with lies? The hall fell silent again. The weight of her words was undeniable. Even Zara lowered her eyes for a moment, realizing the depth of the wound inflicted on Maywish. Maywish turned to her father, who sat frozen with shock. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at his daughter, dressed as a bride but standing broken before him. She walked toward him slowly, her anklets chiming with each step. Abu, take me home. There is no wedding today. A collective gasp spread across the hall. No wedding today. The bride had spoken. Her voice, though soft, carried more weight than any elder's decree. Arslan panicked, his pride shattering. No! Maywish, please, don't do this. Think of our families, think of the guests, think of... Maywish turned, her eyes blazing through her tears. I am thinking of myself, Arslan.
For once, I am thinking of my dignity. And you are not worth it.
The hall erupted into chaos. Guests stood, some arguing, some leaving in disgust, others pulling out their phones to record the scandal. Malik Jamil stood frozen, humiliated beyond words. Zara stood at the back, silent now, her phone still in her hand but no longer raised.
She had said enough.
As Maywish's father led her away, her bridal veil trailing behind her like the remnants of a shattered dream, Arslan fell to his knees on the stage, his hands gripping his head. He had lost everything in one moment, his bride, his family's honor, and his own pride. Zara turned to leave, but before she did, she glanced back at him. Her eyes, once filled with fire, now only carried sorrow.
This is karma, Arslan. You wanted to have everything, but now you have nothing.
And with that, she walked out, disappearing into the murmuring crowd. The grand wedding that was meant to be a celebration had turned into a battlefield of betrayal and heartbreak. The chandeliers still glowed, the flowers still smelled sweet, but the hall felt like a graveyard of broken promises. The Malik mansion was silent the next morning, but it was not the silence of peace. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with shame and unspoken anger. The grand hall that only yesterday had been decorated with flowers, lights, and music now looked lifeless. The petals were scattered on the floor, the chairs stood empty, and the scent of roses mixed with the bitter smell of betrayal. Servants moved quietly, their eyes downcast, whispering to each other about the scandal that had unfolded in front of hundreds of guests. Arslan sat in his room, his head buried in his hands. His sherwani lay crumpled on the floor, a painful reminder of what was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. His eyes were bloodshot from a night without sleep. Every time he closed them, he saw Maywish's tear-streaked face, her voice ringing in his ears, "You destroyed everything before it could even start." He couldn't escape those words. They haunted him. The door swung open suddenly, and his father, Malik Jamil, entered. His face was stern, his eyes cold. He didn't sit, didn't speak softly. His voice thundered like a storm. "You have disgraced us, Arslan. Do you realize what you've done?" Arslan lifted his head, his voice trembling. "Abu, please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought," but Malik Jamil cut him off, his hand raised in anger. "You thought? You thought you could play with two lives and get away with it? You thought no one would find out? You have humiliated this family in front of the entire city. Do you know how many calls I received last night? Do you know how many people are laughing at us right now?" Arslan lowered his gaze, shame washing over him. He wanted to defend himself, to say that Zara had exaggerated, that it wasn't as serious as she made it sound, but deep down he knew there was no defense. He had done wrong. He had betrayed trust. No excuse could change that. "From today," Malik Jamil's voice grew colder, "you are no longer my pride. You are my burden. If you want to live in this house, you will live with the consequences. Don't expect me to protect you. Don't expect me to clean your mess. You will face the world on your own." He turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving Arslan alone with his regret. Meanwhile, in the Ali household, the atmosphere was just as heavy. Maywish sat in her room, no longer in her bridal attire but in a simple dress. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her hands shook as she tried to sip tea her mother had placed before her. The cup rattled against the saucer. Her father, Aslam Ali, sat across from her, silent for a long time before finally speaking. "Beta, I am sorry. I should have seen it. I should have protected you." Maywish shook her head, her voice breaking. "It's not your fault, Abu. I trusted him. I believed every word he said. I thought he loved me." Tears streamed down her face. How could he do this? Why would he ruin me like this? Her mother placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Some men are blinded by their own desires. They don't see the hearts they break. But listen to me, Maywish, this is not your shame. This is not your failure. This is his sin, his betrayal. You are still pure, still honorable." But Maywish felt hollow inside. Her dreams of a new life had crumbled overnight, leaving her with only pain and questions. She remembered every promise Arslan had made, his words of devotion, his claims of loyalty, and each one now felt like a knife in her chest. She thought of Zara too. Though she hated what had happened, she couldn't entirely hate Zara. After all, Zara too had been lied to, used, betrayed. The true villain was Arslan. Back at the Malik mansion, the extended family had gathered in the drawing room. Uncles, aunts, cousins, all of them sat with grim faces. Some were furious, others embarrassed, and some simply wanted to distance themselves from the scandal. Arslan's uncle spoke first. "This has brought shame on all of us. Do you know what people are saying? They are calling our family dishonorable. Our name is mud because of one man's actions." Arslan's mother, her eyes red from crying, whispered, "He is still my son. He made a mistake," but her words were met with harsh replies. "A mistake? Is betrayal a mistake? Is ruining a girl's life a mistake? No, Bobby. This is not a mistake. This is a sin. A betrayal of trust." The voices grew louder, some demanding that Arslan be thrown out of the house, others saying he should be forced to marry Maywish immediately to restore honor. Malik Jamil silenced them all with one wave of his hand. "Enough. There will be no marriage. That chapter is closed. If we try to force it, it will only bring more humiliation. Let him face what he has done." Fahad, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was low but filled with disappointment. "I always looked up to you. I thought you were my role model. But yesterday, watching you stand there, watching Maywish break in front of everyone because of you, I lost all respect. You've not only destroyed your own life, you've destroyed hers too." Arslan swallowed hard, his brother's words cutting deeper than any other. For the first time, he realized the depth of the damage he had caused, not just to Maywish, but to his own family, his own reputation, his own identity. Meanwhile, Zara sat alone in her small apartment. The satisfaction she had felt last night had already faded. She had exposed Arslan, yes, but the image of Maywish's broken face haunted her. She hadn't intended to hurt Maywish, her fight was with Arslan, not the innocent bride. She stared at her phone, scrolling through the messages Arslan had once sent her, messages full of love, promises, sweet lies. Now they felt like ashes. She deleted them one by one, tears streaming down her cheeks. Why did I let him into my life? Why did I believe him? The city, meanwhile, buzzed with gossip. Social media lit up with whispers of the Malik scandal. Guests who had been present shared half-truths and exaggerated stories, spreading the drama like wildfire. Within hours, everyone knew that the proud Arslan Malik had been exposed at his own wedding. His name became a joke, his family's reputation dragged through the mud. In the days that followed, the Malik family began to receive cold shoulders from their business partners. Deals were cancelled, meetings postponed. Malik Jamil realized that his son's personal scandal was now affecting their financial empire. "You've not only ruined your marriage," he told Arslan bitterly, "you've ruined our business. People don't trust a man who cheats. They don't trust his family either." Arslan wandered through the mansion like a ghost. His phone buzzed with calls from friends, but he couldn't bear to answer. He didn't want to hear their pity, their mockery, their disappointment. His once perfect world had collapsed, and he had no one to blame but himself. And yet, despite the shame, despite the anger of his father, despite the loss of respect, a small, stubborn part of Arslan still clung to the idea that he could fix things. Late at night, staring at the ceiling, he whispered to himself, "If I can make Maywish forgive me, maybe everything will be okay again." But Maywish was not the same girl anymore. The betrayal had changed her, hardened her. And unknown to Arslan, fate had more lessons in store, lessons harsher than he could imagine. The storm had only begun. Days passed, but the wounds of the broken wedding were still raw. In the Ali household, Maywish moved like a shadow of her former self. She had always been soft-spoken, but now even her silence carried a heaviness that made everyone around her ache. She avoided the mirror, unable to face the reflection of the girl who had once dreamed of love and companionship. Her bridal clothes were packed away in a trunk, buried as if they were a memory she wished to erase forever. Relatives and neighbors whispered about her misfortune, some pitying, some cruel. "Poor girl, her life is ruined before it even began," one woman said outside the gate. Another replied, "No man will marry her now. She has been humiliated too publicly." Maywish heard these words, and each one cut her like glass. But instead of breaking further, something inside her began to harden. She realized she had two choices: to live forever as a victim of Arslan's betrayal or to rise stronger than before. Meanwhile, Arslan was restless. His once busy phone had gone silent. Friends who used to surround him disappeared, afraid to be associated with scandal. His father's anger hadn't cooled, and his mother avoided him, unable to look him in the eye. Business partners withdrew one after another, and every time Arslan tried to meet someone in the city, whispers followed him. People pointed, people laughed. The confident man who once commanded respect now walked with lowered eyes. Yet in the quiet of his room, he convinced himself he could make things right. "If I can talk to Maywish, if she forgives me, everything will heal. People will move on. They always do." One evening, against his family's wishes, he went to the Ali house. Aslam Ali, Maywish's father, opened the door. His expression turned dark the moment he saw Arslan standing there. "You have some nerve," Aslam said sharply. "After what you did to my daughter, you dare to come here?" Arslan clasped his hands together, his voice desperate. "Uncle, please, just let me see her once. I need to apologize. I need to explain." But Aslam's anger boiled over. "Explain? What explanation can there be for betrayal? Do you think my daughter is so weak that she will return to the man who humiliated her in front of the world? Leave, Arslan. You are not welcome here." He slammed the door shut, and Arslan stood outside in the dark, shame flooding him once more. Inside, Maywish had heard the exchange. She sat in her room, tears streaming silently down her face, but she made no move to go to the door. Part of her longed to scream at him, to ask him why he had done it. But a stronger part whispered, "No. Do not give him the satisfaction of your pain. He doesn't deserve to see your tears." She wiped her face, stood tall, and looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere deep inside, a fire had begun to burn. The next day, Maywish's cousin Aisha came to visit. She found Maywish sitting with her sewing machine, working quietly. "You're sewing?" Aisha asked in surprise. Maywish nodded. "Yes. I can't let myself waste away in sorrow. I studied design, didn't I? It's time I use my skills." Aisha sat beside her, taking her hand. "You're stronger than all of us thought. I'm proud of you." Maywish smiled faintly, though her heart was still aching. "Strength is the only choice I have left." As weeks passed, Maywish began to rebuild her routine. She started taking orders from neighbors for dresses, slowly growing her small business. It wasn't easy, many still whispered behind her back, but she ignored them, focusing on her work. The more she worked, the less power Arslan's betrayal held over her. Her parents supported her quietly, proud of her determination even as they worried about her future. Arslan, on the other hand, spiraled further. His attempts to contact Maywish were all blocked. His business continued to collapse, and even his closest brother Fahad refused to stand by him. One night, drunk on guilt and self-pity, Arslan sat in his car outside Maywish's house, watching the lights from her window. He whispered to himself, "She was supposed to be mine. If only she could forgive me, everything could be different." He didn't realize that forgiveness was no longer what Maywish sought. One morning, as Maywish delivered a dress to a client in the market, she overheard two women talking. "That's her, the girl who was left on her wedding day," one whispered. "Poor thing." The other sighed. "At least she escaped before living with a man like Arslan. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise." Maywish walked past them, her head held high, pretending not to hear. But in her heart, she held on to that last line, a blessing in disguise. Perhaps it was. Perhaps she was saved from a life of misery.
News of Maywish's growing strength reached Zara too.
Sitting in her small apartment, Zara scrolled through social media and saw a post of Maywish at a charity event, helping distribute clothes. Zara stared at the picture, guilt rising in her chest. She remembered the look in Maywish's eyes that night, the hurt, the betrayal.
Zara had wanted revenge on Arslan, but she had ended up wounding an innocent woman too.
She decided she needed to meet Maywish.
When Zara appeared at the Ali household one afternoon, Aslam Ali almost turned her away.
But Maywish intervened.
"Let her in, Abu. I want to hear what she has to say."
Zara stepped inside nervously, her eyes lowered. "Maywish, I came to apologize," she said softly. "I was angry, I was hurt, and in my rage, I exposed him at your wedding.
I thought I was fighting for myself, but I see now that I hurt you more than anyone. I'm sorry."
Maywish studied her for a long moment.
Then she said quietly, "You didn't hurt me, Zara. Arslan did.
You only showed me the truth before it was too late.
Maybe you saved me." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "You are stronger than me.
I wish I had your heart." The two women sat together in silence for a while, both victims of the same man, both carrying scars he had left. But outside these walls, Arslan's troubles only grew.
His father's health began to decline from the stress of scandal and financial loss.
Malik Jamil lay in bed, his once powerful voice reduced to weak words.
"Arslan, you destroyed our name.
If I die tomorrow, it will be with shame." These words broke something inside Arslan. He realized that his betrayal had not only destroyed a bride's dream but had poisoned his entire family's honor. For the first time, he understood what karma meant, not an outside punishment, but the weight of his own sins crushing him from within.
One evening, unable to bear it any longer, Arslan wrote a long letter.
In it, he confessed everything, his mistakes, his selfishness, his lies. He wrote of how he had taken Maywish's trust for granted, how he had played with Zara's heart, how he had betrayed his family. He left the letter on his desk and walked out into the night.
Where he went, no one knew.
Maywish, meanwhile, continued her quiet journey of healing. Though her nights were still filled with tears, her days were filled with purpose. She worked harder, dreamed bigger. She was no longer the girl waiting for a husband to define her worth. She was beginning to define herself. But destiny had not finished its game. Fate was about to bring Arslan and Maywish face to face once again, this time, under circumstances neither could have imagined.
The days following the confrontation were heavy with silence.
Mahira barely spoke to anyone, and when she did, her words carried no warmth, only cold finality. Adil, however, seemed unaffected, as if the storm that had torn through their house hadn't touched him at all. He smiled for his friends, laughed in public, but inside his own home, the walls were hollow with unease. Mahira's heart screamed for answers, for justice, but the man she had once trusted with her soul had now become a stranger before her eyes. It was one evening, just after Maghrib prayers, when Mahira gathered her courage. Sitting across from Adil in the lounge, she fixed her eyes on him. "Adil," she began, her voice trembling but determined, "how long do you plan on playing this game?
Do you think I will stay quiet forever?" Adil looked up from his phone, raising an eyebrow. "Game? What nonsense are you talking about now?" "You know exactly what I mean," she shot back. "You've been cheating. You've been lying. And I can't live like this anymore. I want the truth, every bit of it." Adil leaned back, smirking, his arrogance filling the air like poison. "Mahira, you're imagining things. You've always been too emotional, too suspicious. You think the world revolves around your feelings. But guess what? It doesn't." Her fists clenched. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I gave up everything for you, Adil. My dreams, my peace, even my family's trust, just to stand by your side. And this is what you give me in return?" For a moment, Adil's smirk faltered. But only for a moment. He stood up, adjusting his shirt as if brushing away the weight of her words. "Enough, Mahira. Stop this drama. Either accept me the way I am or," he paused, his voice low and dangerous, "or walk away.
Your choice.
Her heart cracked.
His words were not only cold, they were final. But she realized something important in that moment. She had been fighting alone, trying to hold together something he didn't even want anymore.
And if he didn't value her, why was she still chained to his betrayal?
That night, Mahira cried silently, but as the tears soaked her pillow, a fire began to grow within her.
She knew she couldn't keep living like this.
The truth had to come out, not just for her, but for everyone who still believed Adil was a man of honor. The opportunity came faster than she expected. The very next week, Adil's family arranged a grand dinner at a lavish hall to celebrate his cousin's engagement. The entire extended family would be there: elders, friends, relatives, everyone who admired Adil as the perfect son.
Mahira knew this was the moment.
As the hall filled with laughter and music, Adil walked around with his usual confidence, greeting guests, shaking hands, and basking in the spotlight. Mahira, dressed in a simple but elegant outfit, sat quietly at the edge of the gathering, her eyes following him. Her heart pounded with fear, but her mind was clear. During the dinner, when the elders gathered to make speeches about family honor and values, Mahira rose from her seat. Her voice trembled at first, but then grew stronger.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something to say. Something everyone deserves to know.
The room fell silent.
All eyes turned to her. Adil's smile froze.
Mahira, sit down, he ordered, his voice sharp.
But Mahira did not sit.
You all praise Adil for his loyalty, for his character, for being the pride of this family.
But do you know the truth? Do you know how he's been living behind closed doors?
Her eyes burned into Adil's.
He's been betraying me, betraying this marriage.
He's not the man you think he is.
Gasps filled the room.
Adil's mother stood up in shock, his father's face turned pale, and whispers rippled through the crowd like a storm.
Adil's jaw tightened.
He grabbed Mahira's arm, hissing under his breath.
What do you think you're doing? You'll regret this.
But before he could drag her away, a familiar voice echoed from the entrance.
A woman, holding her phone in hand, walked forward.
It was none other than the girl Adil had been secretly meeting. Her face was pale, her hands trembling, but her voice rang out.
She's telling the truth. I can't live with this guilt anymore. The entire hall erupted in chaos. Mahira's heart pounded, her gamble had worked.
The lies Adil had built for years were crashing down in front of his entire family. But in that moment of triumph, Mahira felt a strange chill.
Adil's eyes, dark with rage, locked onto hers.
He didn't look like a man caught in shame, he looked like a man plotting revenge. The hall was filled with murmurs, gasps, and sharp whispers. Elders exchanged disbelieving glances, women covered their mouths in shock, and young cousins stared wide-eyed at Adil, their ideal brother who now stood exposed in the harshest light. Mahira stood frozen in the center of it all, her heart thundering against her chest. She had spoken her truth, but she hadn't expected the other woman to step forward so boldly. It was as if fate itself had placed the final nail in the coffin of Adil's carefully crafted reputation. The girl, her name was Zara, trembled as she clutched her phone, holding up screenshots of messages and pictures that left no doubt.
The evidence glowed on the screen for anyone close enough to see.
Her voice cracked, but her words cut through the silence like a blade.
I thought he loved me. I thought he would leave his wife and marry me. But he lied to me too. I can't live in this web of lies anymore.
The hall descended into chaos.
Relatives began questioning each other, Adil's mother broke down in tears, and his father's face hardened with rage.
The image of honor they had clung to for years was now in ruins. Adil, however, stood motionless, his face pale but his eyes burning with fury. He took a step toward Mahira, his hand clenching into a fist. You've ruined everything, he hissed under his breath, his voice dripping with venom.
In front of my family.
In front of the entire world.
Do you even know what you've done? Mahira lifted her chin, though her body trembled. I've done what you forced me to do. I've spoken the truth. If you wanted to save face, you should have lived with honesty. Not betrayal. His smirk returned, but it was colder, deadlier than ever before. Truth?
He leaned close enough that only she could hear.
You think this is over? Mahara, you've declared war against me.
And wars always leave casualties. Her blood ran cold.
For the first time, she wasn't just angry, she was afraid.
Not for her pride, but for her safety. The look in Adil's eyes was not of a man caught in shame, it was of a predator cornered, ready to strike back in any way possible.
Before she could respond, Adil's father's voice thundered across the hall. Enough!
Adil, is this true?
Adil's composure cracked, if only for a moment.
He stammered, Baba, she's lying.
They're both lying. This is some drama to humiliate me.
But Zara interrupted, tears running down her face as she held up her phone again. Then explain these pictures. Explain the late-night calls, the hotel bookings in your name.
Gasps rippled through the crowd once more.
Some of Adil's cousins moved closer to see for themselves. The elders who had once praised Adil now looked at him with disgust. His mother sobbed uncontrollably, unable to face the humiliation.
Adil's mask finally shattered.
His rage boiled over, and he shouted at Zara, "You ungrateful woman!
After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me?"
Then he turned on Mahara, his voice like thunder. "And you don't think you'll get away with this? I will make sure you regret every single word you said tonight." Security guards from the hall rushed in as the situation grew heated.
Adil's father raised his hand, silencing the chaos.
His voice was heavy with disappointment. "You've disgraced us, Adil.
In front of everyone. I can't even look at you."
He turned to Mahara, his tone softening. "Beta, I don't know how to undo this damage, but you were right to speak.
A lie this big cannot stay hidden forever."
For the first time in years, Mahara felt seen. The family that once doubted her had finally heard her truth.
But deep inside, the fear from Adil's words lingered.
She knew him well enough, he wouldn't go down quietly. The engagement function ended in disaster.
Guests whispered as they left, carrying the scandal back to their neighborhoods, ensuring that by morning, the whole city would know Adil's truth.
His father walked out without speaking to him again, while his mother refused to leave the hall until Mahira helped her to her feet. The shame weighed heavy on everyone, but none more so than Adil himself. Later that night, back at home, Mahira sat in her room, staring at the wall. Zara had left in silence, her own pain etched across her face. Mahira felt no triumph, only a heavy emptiness.
Yes, Adil had been exposed. Yes, the truth was out. But what came next?
Her phone buzzed.
A new message.
Her blood froze when she saw the sender, Adil.
The message was short, chilling, and filled with menace. "You think tonight was my downfall? No, Mahira. Tonight was just the beginning. You will pay for this." Mahira's hands shook as she read the words again and again.
His threat wasn't empty, she knew him too well.
But what did he mean? What was he planning?
As the night stretched on and shadows crept across the walls, Mahira realized that while she had exposed his lies, she may have also unleashed something far more dangerous. The morning after the disastrous engagement dinner, the entire city buzzed with whispers about Adil's disgrace. What had once been hidden within the walls of his marriage now became the talk of neighborhoods, offices, and family gatherings.
Mahira didn't have to check social media to know that the news was spreading like wildfire.
Wherever she turned, she felt the weight of invisible eyes, some filled with sympathy, others with cruel curiosity. But while the world around her discussed the scandal, Mahira's heart carried only one fear, Adil's words from the night before.
Tonight was just the beginning. You will pay for this.
The morning sunlight streamed through her curtains, yet the house felt darker than ever. Mahira tried to busy herself in the kitchen, but every sound, a door creak, a phone buzz, even the sound of her own footsteps, made her jump. She couldn't shake the thought that Adil was watching her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. Later that day, Adil's father called a family meeting. The elders gathered in the drawing room, their faces stern and heavy with disappointment. Mahira sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as voices rose and fell around her. "This scandal has ruined our reputation," one uncle said.
We can't even show our faces in the community now, another added bitterly.
Adil sat at the far end of the room, his face calm, almost too calm, as if nothing had happened. His lips curled into a faint smile whenever someone spoke against him, as though their anger fed his pride rather than diminished it.
When Adil's father finally spoke, the room grew silent. From today onward, Adil is no longer my responsibility.
He has shamed us beyond forgiveness. If he wishes to live in sin, let him. But as for this family, we cut ties with him until he shows remorse.
The words hit like thunder. Mahera expected Adil to break, to plead, but instead he chuckled under his breath. Cut ties with me? Fine. Do what you want. I don't need anyone.
And as for you, Mahera, his eyes locked on hers, sharp and menacing.
Don't think you've won. You've just painted a target on your back. Mahera's stomach twisted with dread, but she forced herself to look away.
She couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. Days passed, but peace never returned.
Strange things began happening around Mahera.
One evening, she found her car tires slashed. Another night, someone knocked on the door repeatedly, only to vanish into the shadows. Then came the phone calls, unknown numbers that rang once and then cut off, over and over, just enough to keep her unsettled. Her best friend, Syra, visited her during this time. Seeing Mahera's pale face and restless eyes, she grabbed her hands.
Mahera, this is not normal. Adil is trying to scare you. You need to protect yourself.
I know, Mahera whispered, her voice trembling.
But how? Everyone already knows the truth. What more can he do to me? Syra's eyes darkened with concern.
People like him, they don't stop at humiliation. They crave control.
You've taken that from him. Now he'll try to hurt you in other ways.
The words echoed in Mahera's mind long after Syra left. That night, as she lay in bed, her phone buzzed with another message from Adil. This time, it was a picture, her, standing at her balcony earlier that day, unaware that someone had been watching her from the street below. Her breath caught in her throat. The caption under the picture made her blood run cold. I told you, Mahera.
I see everything.
And soon, everyone will see you for what you really are. She dropped the phone, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Fear surged through her body, but alongside it, a new resolve began to grow.
She couldn't allow herself to be hunted like prey. If Adil wanted war, she would have to find the strength to fight back. The days dragged on like heavy chains around Mahera's neck.
Sleep abandoned her, replaced by restless nights filled with shadows that whispered Adil's threats. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps, every flicker of light felt like eyes watching her. She knew something was coming, she could feel it like a storm brewing on the horizon.
But she didn't know when or how it would strike. It happened one Friday afternoon.
Mahera had forced herself to attend her office after a week of avoiding people. She thought being around colleagues might distract her from the suffocating fear.
The office was buzzing with chatter about the weekend plans when her phone rang. It was Syra.
Mahera, don't panic, Syra's urgent voice came through, but you need to know something.
There's a video of you, going around. Mahera's heart nearly stopped. What video?
Syra hesitated, then whispered, it's a private video, Mahera.
Edited. Fake.
Adil he's spreading it everywhere.
People are saying it's you.
Her blood froze. She gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white.
No, that can't be true. I never. I know, Syra cut in quickly. I know you'd never. But people don't care about truth. They care about gossip. They're sharing it like wildfire. Please, don't check it. Just come home. We'll figure this out. But Mahera couldn't stop herself.
Her trembling hands opened social media, and there it was, posts, whispers, comments, all laced with her name.
Her stomach churned.
The video was blurred, the face unclear, but the captions claimed it was her.
The damage was done.
Her reputation, her dignity, all dragged through the mud with a few clicks. She ran out of the office in tears, ignoring the stares of her colleagues. The world outside suddenly felt hostile, every pair of eyes on the street like daggers piercing her skin. By the time she reached home, her chest was tight with panic. She collapsed onto the couch, gasping for breath. Syra arrived soon after, holding her tightly as she sobbed. "This is his revenge, Mahira. He couldn't bear being exposed, so now he's trying to destroy your honor. But listen to me, you are not alone. We'll fight this. We'll take him to court if we have to." Mahira shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Court? Do you think people will wait for the truth? They'll believe what they see. My name, my family's name, everything is finished." Syra cupped her face firmly. "No. A deal is finished, not you. He's desperate, Mahira. This is proof. And desperate men make mistakes." Her friend's words planted a small seed of strength in her heart. But it was hard to hold on to hope when her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages, some from friends offering support, others filled with cruel taunts and accusations. Each notification felt like another slap. That night, Mahira sat by the window, staring at the city lights. She remembered the girl she used to be, the one who had believed in love, in loyalty, in a future with a deal. That girl was gone now, replaced by someone scarred but still standing. She whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "I will not break. Not for him." The next morning, Mahira's world felt heavier than ever. She hadn't slept a single hour. Every time she closed her eyes, the whispers returned, the cruel messages flashed before her, and the blurred video replayed in her mind like a curse. The walls of her home felt like a prison, trapping her with her own fear. But as the sun rose and light filtered through the curtains, Mahira realized something: silence was no longer an option. If she stayed quiet, a deal would keep striking, each blow more brutal than the last. He wanted her broken. And if she didn't rise now, she truly would be destroyed. She picked up her phone with trembling hands and dialed Syra. "I'm ready," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "Ready for what?" Syra asked gently. "To fight him. To stop running. If I don't do this now, I'll never survive." Syra didn't hesitate. "Good. I'll come with you. We'll go to the police station. We'll show them the evidence." Hours later, the two women walked into the station. Mahira's heart pounded as she stepped inside, the weight of dozens of eyes on her. She felt exposed, ashamed, but Syra squeezed her hand. "Stay strong. This is the first step." The officer on duty looked up as they approached. Mahira took a deep breath and spoke, her voice trembling but determined. "I need to file a complaint. My husband is spreading fake videos of me online to destroy my reputation." The officer's expression shifted from boredom to concern. "Do you have proof?" Mahira nodded and handed over her phone, showing the messages, the threats, and the screenshots of the video circulating online. The officer studied them carefully, then looked back at her. "This is serious. We'll register a case under cybercrime. But be prepared, this won't be easy. Men like him, they don't stop without a fight." Mahira's throat tightened, but she forced herself to nod. "I'm ready." By the evening, news had spread again, but this time, it wasn't about the fake video. It was about Mahira's bold step. She had filed a formal case against Adil, and society was watching closely. Some people admired her courage. Others mocked her, saying she was trying to play the victim. The battle was now public, and there was no turning back. That night, Adil called her. She stared at the screen, her chest tight. Finally, she answered. His voice was low, venomous, filled with restrained rage. "You really think the law can save you, Mahira? You think running to the police makes you brave? No. It makes you foolish. You've dragged me into a fight where only one of us will survive. And trust me, it won't be you." Mahira's hand trembled, but her voice came out steady. "You've already lost, Adil. The moment you betrayed me, the moment you spread those lies, you lost everything. And now I won't stop until the world sees who you really are."
For a moment, there was silence. Then Adil laughed a hollow, chilling laugh. You've declared war, Mehera. Fine. But you don't know the kind of man you're fighting.
By the time I'm done, you won't just lose your name, you'll lose everything you've ever loved. The call ended, but the echo of his threat stayed with her long into the night.
And Mehera knew this was no longer about betrayal, or even revenge. This was survival. The night after Adil's phone call, Mehera couldn't bring herself to sleep.
She sat in the dim glow of a single lamp, staring at the walls, her heart pounding with every passing second. His voice still echoed in her head, by the time I'm done, you won't just lose your name, you'll lose everything you've ever loved.
The threat was no longer just words. She knew him too well, when Adil said something, he meant it. The following morning seemed ordinary at first.
The neighborhood buzzed with vendors calling out their sales, children's laughter echoed from the street, and the world outside her window seemed untouched by the storm brewing in her life. But Mehera felt it in her bones, today, something would happen. Around noon, she decided to go to the market. She thought keeping herself busy would distract her mind from the constant fear.
Syra offered to come, but Mehera refused.
I can't let him make me a prisoner in my own house, she insisted. The streets were crowded, filled with the hum of voices and the aroma of fresh naan and spices. For a moment, Mehera almost felt normal again, like she had before her world fell apart. But then, as she browsed through a stall of fabrics, she noticed a black car parked across the street. The tinted windows hid whoever was inside, but she felt the weight of unseen eyes fixed on her. Her chest tightened. She tried to brush it off as paranoia, but as she moved from one shop to another, the car followed slowly, always keeping a careful distance. Fear clawed at her throat. She clutched her shopping bag tightly and quickened her pace. Suddenly, two men stepped out from the car, tall, broad, their faces partially hidden by caps. They moved toward her with deliberate steps. Mehera's blood turned cold. She didn't wait to think, she dropped the bag and ran. The crowded bazaar turned into a maze as she weaved through people, her dupatta slipping off her shoulder. Heart pounding, breath ragged, she glanced back, yes, they were chasing her. Panic surged through her veins. Ya Allah, help me, she whispered under her breath. She darted into a side alley, hoping to lose them, but the path was narrow and empty. Trapped. The two men cornered her. One of them sneered, "Madam, you should have stayed quiet. Sir doesn't like women who talk too much." Adil. Before they could grab her, Mehera let out a scream so piercing that it echoed down the alley. A nearby fruit vendor dropped his cart and came running, followed by a small crowd. The men cursed under their breath and bolted back toward the car. The black vehicle screeched away, disappearing into the busy street. Mehera collapsed against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. Strangers surrounded her, offering help, but all she could think was one thing: he's escalating. He's not just attacking my name anymore, he's after my life. By the time Syra rushed to her side, Mehera could barely speak. She managed to whisper, "He sent them, he wants to silence me." Syra's face hardened with fury. Then let him come. He'll see what it means when a woman decides she won't bow down anymore. Mehera, this isn't just your fight now. We'll make sure he pays. That night, Mehera sat in her room, trembling but alive. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, eyes swollen but burning with a new fire. Adil wanted her weak, broken, begging for mercy. But instead, he had awakened a version of her she hadn't known existed. She touched the mirror gently, whispering to herself, "If he wants war, he'll have it. But this time, I'll be ready." The days after the attack in the bazaar passed with heavy silence. Mehera could no longer pretend that Adil's threats were just empty words. He had sent men after her, and though she had escaped, she knew it was only the beginning. Sleep became a stranger, every creak of the floorboards, every passing vehicle outside her window, felt like danger approaching. Syra refused to leave her side. "You can't keep waiting for him to attack, Mehera. We have to strike first." "But how?" Mehera asked, her voice trembling. "He has money, influence, everyone bends to him." "Not everyone," Syra said firmly. "We need evidence. Proof of what he's done."
That's the only weapon he fears.
That night, while Mahara sat clutching her prayer beads, Syra began making calls, quietly, cautiously. She reached out to an old friend who worked in a law office, then another who had once been Adil's driver.
Slowly, a picture began to emerge: documents hidden in his office, financial records of bribes and illegal business dealings, and whispers of people he had threatened before. Meanwhile, Mahara found herself turning inward, searching for strength.
She prayed longer, pouring her heart out to Allah, tears streaking her face as she whispered, "Grant me sabr, grant me courage.
Don't let him destroy me."
And somehow, through those prayers, she began to feel a new resolve. One evening, as she sat by the window, the call to prayer echoing through the city, she remembered something. Years ago, Adil had hidden a small safe in his study, behind the second bookshelf, a place he thought no one noticed.
Could it still be there?
She told Syra, who immediately seized on the idea. If we can get inside that safe, we might find everything we need to bring him down.
But the risk was immense. Adil guarded his house like a fortress, and though Mahara still had a key, stepping inside meant stepping into the lion's den. That night, Mahara wrestled with herself.
She knew she had to make a choice: continue living in fear, or face Adil head-on by uncovering the truth. Her heart raced as she imagined standing inside that house again, the walls still echoing with the lies and betrayals that had torn her life apart.
The next day, Syra laid out a plan.
"We'll go when he's away at his business meetings.
You know his routines better than anyone. We'll be quick, silent. Get in, get the documents, get out." But fate was never so simple.
When they arrived near Adil's house 2 days later, the street was quiet, almost unnervingly so. Mahara's hands shook as she held the old key, her breath coming in shallow gasps. With every step toward the door, memories flooded back: her wedding day, her laughter in that home, the day she discovered his betrayal. She turned the key in the lock. The door creaked open. Inside, everything was exactly as she remembered: the polished furniture, the faint smell of Adil's cologne, the family photos carefully arranged to display a false picture of perfection. It was as if time hadn't moved at all, except that now the house felt suffocating, like it was watching her.
Syra whispered, quickly, "Show me the study."
Mahara led her through the hallway, her steps unsteady. The study door stood ajar. They entered, the room dimly lit by the afternoon sun filtering through heavy curtains. And there it was, the bookshelf. Mahara's heart pounded as she reached for the second shelf, pulling books aside until her fingers brushed against the cold metal of the safe's edge. "It's still here," she whispered.
Syra's eyes glinted with determination. "Now we just need to open it."
But before they could take another step, a floorboard creaked from the hallway. They froze.
Mahara's blood ran cold. Someone was inside the house.
A shadow stretched across the floor as heavy footsteps approached the study door. The doorknob turned slowly, each click echoing like a drumbeat in Mahara's chest. She and Syra exchanged a terrified glance.
There was no time to hide, no time to think.
The door swung open.
It wasn't Adil.
A young man stepped in, tall and lean, with sharp eyes that widened when they landed on Mahara.
For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of his quickening breath.
"Baji." His voice cracked with disbelief.
What are you doing here?" Mahara blinked.
Recognition flickered.
Asim?
It was Adil's nephew, the quiet boy who used to bring her tea during family gatherings, the one who rarely spoke but always looked at her with respect. He had grown taller, stronger, but his eyes still carried the same gentleness. Syra quickly stepped forward, her tone defensive. "If you scream, if you call anyone, we're finished." But Asim shook his head.
No. I won't.
I knew he'd do something like this.
Chacha Adil, he's not the man he pretends to be."
His voice trembled, but there was anger burning beneath it.
"I've seen the things he hides. I've heard the threats. I've stayed silent for too long."
Mahara's lips parted in shock.
"Asim, why are you here?"
He glanced toward the bookshelf, then back at her.
"Because I know about the safe. I know what's inside. Cyrus' eyes narrowed. And how exactly do you know that? Asim hesitated, then spoke with urgency. I once saw him open it. I was just a kid, hiding in the corner when he thought no one was watching. I never forgot the combination. I don't know why, but maybe now I understand.
Mahera felt her heart race.
Could this really be happening? Was Allah sending her help from the most unexpected place?
Asim, she whispered, stepping closer.
If you help me, you'll be putting yourself in danger. Adil will destroy anyone who stands against him. For the first time, Asim's jaw tightened with determination. Then let him try. I'm not afraid anymore. Before Mahera could respond, the sound of a car engine roared outside. All three of them froze. Tires screeched against the driveway gravel. Syra cursed under her breath. He's back. Panic surged through Mahera's veins.
There was no time to argue. Asim rushed to the safe, fingers moving quickly across the dial.
Trust me, he hissed.
The lock clicked open, and the heavy door swung wide. Inside were stacks of files, envelopes stuffed with cash, and a small hard drive gleaming under the dim light. Mahera's hands shook as she grabbed the hard drive, clutching it tightly against her chest. This was it, the weapon she needed to expose him.
But then, the front door slammed open downstairs. Heavy footsteps thundered through the hall.
Adil's voice bellowed, filled with rage.
Mahera! Mahera's blood froze. He knew. Syra grabbed her arm. We have to move now.
But the study door was wide open. And Adil's shadow was already stretching across the hallway, drawing closer with every second.
The sound of Adil's voice cut through the air like a blade. Mahera's chest tightened as her grip on the hard drive grew firmer.
The footsteps grew louder, closer, until the very walls of the house seemed to tremble with his fury. Syra looked at her, eyes wide but blazing with defiance.
We can't run, Mahera. If we do, he'll hunt us down again and again. We end this now.
Before Mahera could answer, Adil appeared in the doorway, his figure filling the frame like a shadow of doom. His eyes fell first on Mahera, then on the open safe, and finally on the hard drive in her hand.
The veins in his neck bulged as rage twisted his face. So it's true, he hissed, stepping inside. You dared to break into my house. My house, Mahera. After everything I gave you. Mahera's lips trembled, but her voice came steady. You didn't give me anything, Adil. You only took my peace, my trust, my dignity. And now, you're going to pay for it. Adil's laugh was cold and cruel. Pay? Do you really think anyone cares about your tears?
The world believes what I tell them. One word from me, and you're nothing but a liar, a disgrace.
His eyes flicked to Asim. And you, traitor. I should have known you'd stab me in the back.
Asim stepped forward, his fists clenched.
You destroyed this family long before I ever lifted a finger. I won't stay silent anymore, cha-cha. Adil's hand shot toward Mahera, trying to snatch the hard drive. But Syra stepped between them, blocking him.
Don't touch her, she snapped, her voice like thunder.
Adil's fury exploded.
He shoved her aside, sending her crashing against the bookshelf. Books tumbled to the floor, the air filling with dust and chaos. Mahera screamed, clutching the drive tighter.
You think this will save you? Adil snarled, advancing on her. Do you have any idea who I am? I own people. Judges, officers, the same society you think will believe you. You're nothing, Mahera. Nothing without me. But Mahera's fear had burned away into something stronger.
Her voice rang out, steady and sharp.
No, Adil. You're wrong. You're the one who's nothing. A coward who hides behind lies and money. Today, your mask will break.
Adil lunged again, but this time Asim intercepted him.
The young man slammed his shoulder into his uncle, forcing him back. The two grappled, Adil's strength against Asim's desperation.
The struggle shook the room, furniture crashing, papers scattering.
Mahera wanted to run, to flee with the evidence, but her legs wouldn't move. She couldn't leave Asim behind. She couldn't let Adil win, not again. Then, suddenly, Adil roared and threw Asim against the desk. The young man cried out, collapsing to the floor. Adil turned, panting heavily, his eyes locking on Mahera once more. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Give me the drive, or I swear, you won't leave this house alive." Mahera's heart pounded, sweat beading on her forehead. Behind her, Saira groaned, struggling to rise. Beside her, Asim lay dazed, trying to push himself up. And in front of her stood Adil, the man who had once promised her the world, now threatening to destroy her completely. For the first time in her life, Mahera stood her ground. She lifted the drive high, her voice cutting through the tension. "Then you'll have to kill me, Adil. Because I will never, never give this back to you." Adil's face twisted with rage as he lunged toward her, his hand outstretched. And at that exact moment, the front door burst open downstairs. A commanding voice shouted, "Police! Don't move!" The thunder of boots filled the hallway. Flashlights cut through the dimness as uniformed officers stormed into the house. Mahera's breath caught, she could hardly believe what she was seeing. Adil froze like a predator caught in his own trap, his eyes darting wildly as if searching for an escape. "Put your hands up," one officer barked, weapon drawn. But Adil laughed, a hollow, mocking sound. "Do you even know who I am? You think you can storm into my house without consequences? I'll bury every single one of you in paperwork before the day is done." The officers didn't flinch. One stepped forward, flashing a warrant. "We know exactly who you are, Mr. Adil. And we know exactly what you've done." Mahera's knees almost gave way. How had they managed this? She looked at Saira, who leaned against the bookshelf, still clutching her side from the shove. Saira shook her head, whispering, "Not me." Then her eyes turned to Asim. The young man coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his lip, but he managed to nod. I called them. I sent them everything I had on him. The recordings. The bribes. The threats." Mahera's heart swelled with shock and pride. He had been planning this long before she even knew it. Adil's fury exploded. "You worthless boy." He lunged toward Asim, but two officers grabbed him, forcing him to the ground. His roars filled the room as they snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. "Do you think this will stop me? I'll be out by tomorrow. You hear me, Mahera? This isn't the end. I'll ruin you all." Mahera stood frozen, clutching the hard drive to her chest, her hands trembling. Watching Adil pinned to the ground, powerless for the first time, stirred something in her: relief, fear, but most of all, disbelief. Could it really be ending like this? The lead officer approached her gently. "Madam, is this the evidence?" He pointed to the hard drive. Mahera nodded silently, handing it over. The weight of it left her hands, but not her heart. She whispered, "Please, make sure it doesn't disappear." "He'll try everything." The officer gave a small, reassuring nod. "It's already under protection. This time, he won't buy his way out so easily." Adil's voice carried from the floor, venom dripping with every word. "You think you've won, Mahera? You think anyone will believe your pathetic story? You're nothing without me." But Mahera finally found her voice. Her words cut through the air like steel. "No, Adil. You're the one who's nothing. And today, the world will see it." The officers dragged him out, his shouts echoing through the house. As the sound faded, silence fell over the room. Mahera's body trembled, her legs weak, but Saira rushed to her, wrapping her arms around her. "It's over, Mahera," Saira whispered. "It's finally over." But deep inside, Mahera felt a pang of unease. Adil wasn't a man who accepted defeat. His threats still rang in her ears. Could bars really hold a man who had spent his life bending the world to his will? Asim, leaning against the desk, winced but managed to say, "We've only won the first battle." He'll fight to the last breath.
Mahera looked at them both, her voice low but resolute.
Then so will we.
And in that moment, though Adil had been dragged away, Mahera knew her war was far from finished. The days after Adil's arrest were a whirlwind. News spread like fire, his face on every channel, headlines screaming of corruption, blackmail, and betrayal. For the first time, people were speaking openly about him.
Some whispered in shock, others smirked as if justice had finally arrived.
But for Mahera, the weight of fear had not lifted. She sat in her living room, the TV blaring with reports.
Businessman Adil Khan arrested in a late-night raid, the anchor announced. Evidence recovered suggests large-scale bribery and extortion.
Sources confirm his own nephew may have assisted in the investigation.
Mahera muted the television, her hands trembling.
She had dreamed of this moment, Adil exposed, the world finally seeing his true face.
Yet unease gnawed at her. She knew him too well.
He was like a snake, cornered, dangerous, and always searching for a way to strike back.
The first hearing arrived swiftly.
The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Journalists crowded the steps, cameras flashing as Adil was escorted in, still in handcuffs but wearing that same arrogant smirk.
His eyes scanned the room until they found Mahera sitting with Saira and Asim.
He tilted his head slightly, as if mocking her, as if saying, "This is nothing.
You won't win." The judge entered, and silence fell. The prosecution laid out the case, financial documents, bribes, witness testimonies, even recordings Asim had secretly provided.
The evidence seemed overwhelming. But Adil's lawyer, a sharp, silver-tongued man with decades of courtroom victories, rose with a calm smile. "Your Honor," he began, "we must be careful not to confuse accusations with proof. What we have here is a man being attacked by his bitter ex-wife, desperate to ruin his reputation after a failed marriage.
Isn't it convenient that her so-called evidence appears now, years later? Isn't it suspicious that his own nephew, who stands to gain financially from his downfall, suddenly becomes the prosecution's golden witness?"
Whispers rippled through the room.
Mahera's stomach clenched.
She wanted to scream, to shout that every word was a lie, but she had to stay quiet. The lawyer continued, his voice smooth as silk. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a case of corruption, it is a case of vengeance.
A jealous woman. A greedy nephew. A conspiracy."
Adil leaned back in his chair, smirking at Mahera, his confidence returning. He whispered something to his lawyer, who nodded and produced another document. Furthermore, the lawyer said, "My client has powerful allies who can vouch for his character, men of standing, men whose words hold weight in this very society."
And one by one, those allies came forward.
Influential businessmen, politicians, even a community leader, each testifying that Adil was a man of integrity, a man who had been targeted unfairly.
Mahera felt her hope slipping away with every testimony. The courtroom, once so heavy with the promise of justice, now seemed to tilt back in Adil's favor.
His smirk grew wider, his eyes never leaving hers. During recess, Mahera sat outside on the bench, her hands buried in her lap. "He's twisting everything," she whispered.
"He'll walk free. I know he will."
Saira gripped her shoulder firmly.
"Don't you dare give up, Mahera. We've come too far."
Asim, his face pale but his jaw set, leaned closer.
"He may have allies, but so do we. The truth is on our side. And if we dig deeper, we'll find more, enough to bury him completely."
Mahera raised her eyes, determination flickering again.
She remembered the files in the safe. Yes, they had the hard drive, but had they really uncovered everything? What if there was more hidden, something even stronger, something Adil was terrified of being revealed?
And just as that thought crossed her mind, she caught Adil staring at her from inside the courtroom. He wasn't just smirking anymore, there was a flicker of unease in his eyes, just for a moment. As if he knew she might still hold a card he couldn't control.
The battle wasn't over.
In fact, it was only just beginning. The courtroom became a battlefield of words. Each day, Mahera walked in with Saira and Asim by her side, her heart heavy but her spine straight. She refused to bow her head before Adil again. But still, his smirk never faded. He wore it like armor, as if daring her to keep fighting. The prosecution began presenting witnesses: a clerk from Adil's office who admitted to signing false contracts under his orders, a driver who recalled carrying suitcases of cash to unknown locations, even a junior officer who confessed that Adil had bribed him to lose certain reports. Each testimony felt like a small victory for Mahira. But Adil's lawyer was ruthless. With every witness, he twisted the narrative, painting them as liars, as desperate people seeking revenge or money. "Do you have proof of these so-called suitcases?" he asked the driver, voice dripping with condescension. The driver stammered, unable to answer. Murmurs filled the courtroom. When the clerk faltered, the lawyer sneered, "Or is it true that you were fired for incompetence, and now you want to tarnish an honest man's name?" The witness shrank, his confidence collapsing under the weight of words. Mahira's stomach churned. This was Adil's power. He didn't need to tell the truth. He only needed to break people. Then came the most gut-wrenching moment. Mahira herself was called to the stand. She walked slowly, every eye in the room fixed on her. Sitting in the witness chair, her hands trembled, but she kept her gaze steady. The prosecutor asked gentle questions first: her marriage, the lies she discovered, the threats Adil made. Her voice wavered, but she spoke the truth, each word carrying years of pain. But when Adil's lawyer stood, the air shifted. He smiled coldly. "Mrs. Mahira, or should I say, bitter ex-wife?" The room stirred with whispers. "You claim my client threatened you. Do you have recordings? Messages? Any solid evidence at all?" Mahira's lips parted. "No, but..." He cut her off. "So we are to take your word alone? A woman scorned, who has every reason to destroy the man who left her." Mahira's chest heaved. "He didn't just leave me, he destroyed me. He made me live in fear every day. He..." "Answer the question," the lawyer snapped, his voice sharp. "Do you have proof?" Her throat tightened. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. She shook her head slowly. "No." The lawyer turned to the judge, his smile triumphant. "No further questions." Adil leaned back, his smirk wide, his eyes glittering with victory. Mahira left the stand with her heart in shreds. She felt exposed, humiliated. For a moment, she wanted to collapse, to give up, to let him win just to end the torment. But as she sat down, Saira gripped her hand tightly, whispering, "Don't break, Mahira. This is exactly what he wants." Then Asim leaned in, his voice low but urgent. "Baji, there's more. I know it. That hard drive, it isn't just money records. I remember once." Chacha was furious. He shouted about a video, something that could ruin everything if it ever got out. If that video is on the drive, it's the key. Mahira's pulse quickened. A video. Could it be something Adil was truly afraid of? The hearing adjourned for the day, but as they walked out, Adil caught Mahira's gaze. He mouthed two words across the crowd: "You'll lose." For the first time, however, his smirk faltered just a little. Mahira clutched her dupatta, whispering under her breath, "Not this time, Adil. Not this time." That night, the weight of the trial pressed down on Mahira like a mountain. She sat at her small dining table with Saira and Asim, the hard drive lying in front of them like a ticking time bomb. It was their last hope. Without it, the court would turn against them, and Adil would walk free. Asim wiped sweat from his brow. "Baji, I'm telling you, there's something inside this drive. I remember the way Chacha once panicked when someone mentioned a recording. He called it the end of me if it ever leaked." Mahira's fingers hovered over the device. "Then this is it. This is what he's hiding." Saira nodded firmly. "So we open it tonight." But it wasn't that simple. The drive was encrypted, locked with layers of protection. Mahira had tried once before, but it demanded a password. One wrong move could wipe everything. Asim leaned forward. "I know someone. A friend of mine, Faison. He's good with systems, hacking, all of that. If anyone can unlock this, it's him." Mahira hesitated. Bringing another person into their fragile circle felt dangerous.
What if a deal got to him? What if he betrayed them? But Syra spoke with quiet urgency. Do we have another choice?
Tomorrow, the defense will tear apart the last of our witnesses.
Without this, we lose.
And so, a few hours later, they met Faison in a small, dimly lit apartment on the outskirts of the city. He was young, sharp-eyed, with a laptop that looked like an extension of his hands. He listened quietly as Asim explained, then said only 2 words, "Give me." For hours, the only sounds were the rapid tapping of keys, the whir of fans, and Meher's pounding heartbeat. She sat clutching her prayer beads, whispering verses under her breath. Adil's face haunted her, his smirk, his arrogance, his whispered threats. If Faison failed, it was all over. Finally, Faison leaned back, exhaling. Almost there. Just one more barrier. His fingers flew across the keys. Then a soft ding echoed from the laptop. Got it. The screen filled with folders, hundreds of them. Files of bank transfers, contracts, names of politicians and officers, all tied to Adil's empire of corruption. But buried among them was a single folder labeled only, Truth. Faison clicked it open. Inside was a video file. He double-clicked. The screen flickered, then filled with the image of Adil himself. He was in his office, unaware of the hidden camera recording him. His voice was calm at first, then grew sharper. If anyone dares cross me, they know what happens. I've silenced men before. Paid the right officers. Even that judge, he's mine. They all bow to me. Mahira? She'll never win. If I have to destroy her completely, I will. And if anyone thinks I can't, let them remember what happened to those who stood against me. The video ended abruptly. Mahira's breath caught in her throat. Syra covered her mouth with both hands. Asim clenched his fists. This is it, he whispered. This is the proof. Not just corruption threats, confessions. It's all here. But before relief could fully settle, Faison frowned at the screen. There's more. He clicked another file. This one showed Adil handing an envelope stuffed with cash to a high-ranking official, one of the very men who had testified for him in court just days ago. The room went cold. Syra whispered, Ya Allah, this will shake the entire system. Mahira stared at the screen, her pulse racing. She had the weapon now, the one thing Adil could never twist, never deny. But she also knew what it meant. If this got out, Adil wouldn't just fight harder. He would unleash every last ounce of his power to destroy her before the truth reached the courtroom. As they packed up the files, Faison looked at them with warning in his eyes. You don't understand. With evidence like this, he won't just try to win the case. He'll try to silence you before you can show it. And Mahira knew he was right. The next morning, as she prepared for another day in court, she caught sight of a black car idling outside her street. Its tinted windows glistened under the sun. Watching. Waiting. The war wasn't over. In fact, it was about to explode. The courtroom was a furnace of tension that morning. Every seat was filled, every corridor echoing with whispers. The case had reached a fever pitch, newspapers were printing daily updates, television anchors debated endlessly, and social media buzzed with predictions. Mahira walked into the room, her steps steady, though her heart thundered inside her chest. In her bag rested the hard drive, the weapon that could end Adil's reign forever. Syra walked beside her, carrying a folder, eyes darting nervously toward the corners of the hall. Asim followed close, his jaw clenched, scanning every face. They all knew Adil wouldn't let this happen without a fight. And then, like a shadow over sunlight, he entered. Adil Khan strode into the courtroom in a crisp black suit, his smile arrogant, his chin raised high. Around him, his lawyers carried stacks of files, whispering, laughing even, as if victory was already theirs. But Mahira saw it, the faint flicker of unease in Adil's eyes, a crack in his mask. He knew she had something. He just didn't know what. The judge struck his gavel. Order in the court. We shall proceed with today's session.
The defense began first.
Adil's lawyer, Malik, spoke with smooth confidence.
My lord, it is clear that the accusations against my client are built on personal vendettas and hearsay. Witnesses have contradicted themselves, documents have been discredited, and yet, we are still here, wasting the court's time.
He spread his arms wide.
If justice means anything, this trial should end today, and my client should walk free.
A murmur of agreement rippled through Adil's supporters seated in the gallery.
Mahera rose slowly. Her voice was calm, but it carried like a blade across the room.
My lord, the defense speaks of wasted time.
But what if the time was used to hide the truth? What if all these contradictions were not confusion, but the careful manipulation of a man who believes he owns this city? Adil smirked, leaning back in his chair. Objection. Emotional appeal, no evidence.
The judge narrowed his eyes.
Sustained. Advocate Mahera, evidence is required.
Mahera drew in a breath, her hand sliding into her bag.
Then evidence is what I shall provide. She lifted the hard drive and held it up. Inside this device lies proof.
Proof not just of corruption, but of threats, confessions, and crimes that Mr. Adil Khan himself admitted in his own words. We move to submit it before the court.
The entire courtroom erupted.
Gasps, whispers, frantic shifting.
Adil's smile faltered, then vanished entirely.
He shot up from his seat, slamming a hand on the table.
This is fabricated. This is planted evidence. Malik rushed to his side. My lord, the defense strongly objects. This is a violation of procedure. No prior notice was given.
We demand the evidence be rejected. The judge banged his gavel, struggling to restore order.
Silence. Advocate Mahera, are you certain this evidence is authentic? Mahera met his eyes with unflinching resolve. Yes, my lord.
Verified by a third-party expert.
It will speak for itself. The judge hesitated, then nodded. Very well. Present the evidence.
Faison, seated quietly in the back, rose and connected the drive to a court-provided laptop. The projector flickered to life.
For a heartbeat, the courtroom was silent, waiting.
Then the video began to play. There was Adil, sitting in his office, his voice sharp and venomous. If anyone dares cross me, they know what happens.
I've silenced men before. Paid the right officers. Even that judge, he's mine. They all bow to me. Mahera? She'll never win.
If I have to destroy her completely, I will.
And if anyone thinks I can't, let them remember what happened to those who stood against me.
The room froze.
Gasps cut through the silence like knives.
Journalists scribbled furiously, cameras clicked, and even the judge's expression hardened. Syra squeezed Mahera's hand, tears brimming in her eyes.
Asim whispered, Ya Allah, it's over for him.
But it wasn't over. Adil surged to his feet, his face flushed with rage.
This is a lie. This is doctored footage.
I will not stand for this slander. The judge slammed his gavel down.
Order.
Mr. Khan, you will sit down.
But Adil didn't sit.
His mask had shattered. He pointed directly at Mahera, his voice thundering through the hall.
You think you've won? You don't know what you've started. You don't know what I can do.
Guards rushed forward, trying to restrain him. His lawyers scrambled, shouting objections, trying to delay the inevitable.
And then another file played, this time showing him handing bribes to an official who had just testified in his favor. The officer's face was clear, undeniable. The courtroom erupted again, this time in outrage. The judge's gavel could barely contain the chaos. Silence. Silence, or I will clear the room.
His voice was thunderous.
This evidence changes everything. But as the court descended into uproar, Mahera noticed something chilling.
Out of the corner of her eye, near the back exit, a man stood watching her.
He wasn't a reporter or a lawyer.
His gaze was cold, calculating. And when their eyes met, he raised his hand ever so slightly, and slid his thumb across his throat.
Mahera's breath caught. Yes, a deal was cornered.
Yes, she had struck the blow that could end him. But now, he would unleash something darker, something far more dangerous.
The war wasn't just in the courtroom anymore.
The courtroom had barely been adjourned when the storm outside began to brew. The air felt heavier than usual, the sky turning the color of lead as if nature itself knew what had been unleashed. Journalists swarmed the courthouse steps, their microphones like daggers pointed at anyone connected to the case. Cameras flashed, voices shouted over one another, and the world seemed to spin faster.
Mahera pushed through the crowd with Syra at her side and Asim clearing the way.
Her bag was clutched tightly against her chest, the hard drive still inside, now more dangerous than any weapon.
Reporters screamed questions. Advocate Mahera, did you expect this revelation? Do you believe Adil Khan will be sentenced? Are you afraid for your life after exposing him? She didn't answer. She couldn't.
Her focus was on moving, on surviving this moment. Because deep inside, she knew, Adil wasn't finished. Across the road, black cars lingered at the curb. Their tinted windows reflected the chaos, and though the engines were silent, their presence was loud enough to rattle her bones. Mahera's eyes darted to the man standing near one of them, the same man from inside the courtroom, the one who had slid his thumb across his throat. His eyes locked on hers, and a thin smile curled across his face. Quickly, Asim hissed, ushering them toward their own car. He opened the back door, pushing Mahera and Syra inside. His voice was tense.
Baji, don't look back. Just sit. But as the driver pulled away, Mahera couldn't help glancing through the window. Two of the black cars peeled off from the curb and followed them into the traffic.
Her heartbeat thundered. "They're following us," she whispered.
Syra clutched her arm. Ya Allah, what do we do?
Asim turned, his face pale but determined.
We don't go home. If they know where you live, it's over. We'll go somewhere safe, Faison's apartment.
It's hidden, small, and they won't think of it first. The driver weaved through the streets, trying to lose the shadows behind them.
But the cars followed like predators, never too close, never too far.
The tension in the car grew unbearable. Every turn felt like a trap, every red light a noose tightening around their necks. Then, at one narrow intersection, it happened. One of the black cars suddenly accelerated, cutting them off at the front. The second car swung up behind, blocking their escape. Tires screeched. Horns blared.
Mahera's car came to a halt, trapped between the two. Asim's hand went to the door. Stay inside, he ordered.
But it was too late. Men in dark clothing spilled from the black cars, their faces covered. One of them carried a bat, another a long knife glinting in the afternoon light. The leader, the man with the throat gesture, walked forward slowly, his calmness more terrifying than the weapons. He tapped on the window with a gloved finger, his eyes fixed on Mahera.
Open the door, he mouthed.
Syra's breath hitched, tears spilling from her eyes.
Mahera's hands trembled, but she didn't move.
Her mind raced. If she stepped out, they'd kill her. If she stayed inside, they'd drag her out anyway. And then, just as the man raised his arm to smash the window, the wail of sirens cut through the air.
Police jeeps came tearing around the corner, lights flashing, tires screeching. Officers spilled into the street, guns drawn, shouting commands.
The men from the black cars hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then, like smoke, they scattered. Two vehicles roared off down side streets, the men disappearing into alleys. The leader, though, stood his ground for a moment longer. He leaned closer to the window, his lips forming silent words, "Next time, no police." Then he melted into the chaos, gone before anyone could grab him. Inside the car, Mahera's body shook as relief and terror clashed in her veins.
Syra sobbed quietly, clutching her hand. Asim swore under his breath, pounding the seat in frustration. This is only the beginning. He won't stop now.
He'll keep coming until, his words trailed off. Mahera finished them for him, her voice steady despite the fear.
Until one of us is gone.
The police escorted them to safety, but the warning had been delivered loud and clear. Adil had unleashed his wolves, and next time, they wouldn't miss. That night, as Mahira sat in Faizan's dim apartment, the weight of the hard drive felt heavier than ever. It was proof of Adil's crimes, yes, but it was also the reason death now stalked her every step. And in the shadows of the city, Adil Khan himself sat in his mansion, glass of whiskey in hand, his eyes burning with fury. "She wants war," he muttered, his voice venomous. "Then war is what she'll get." The day of the final hearing dawned heavy and gray, the sky blanketed in storm clouds as if nature itself was holding its breath. Rain drizzled softly over the city, slicking the streets, making everything glisten like glass. For Mahira, the morning felt endless. She hadn't slept a single hour the night before, her mind replaying the threat, the chase, the way that man had pressed his finger to the glass as if marking her for death. But today, there was no choice left. The court would hear closing arguments. The judge would decide. And either Adil Khan would fall, or Mahira's entire fight, all the pain, loss, and risk would be for nothing. In the courthouse hallway, Mahira stood with Saira and Asim. Faizan clutched the evidence bag, holding the hard drive like it was made of fire. Every face around them was a stranger, yet every stranger felt like a spy. Mahira's eyes scanned the corridors. She saw reporters scribbling notes, lawyers arguing with clerks, and at the far end 2 men in black coats watching too closely. Her chest tightened. Saira touched her arm softly. "Appa, you don't have to do this alone." Mahira forced a small smile. "I've never been alone. Not for a moment." She looked at them both, her sister and her cousin, her allies who had carried her through the fire. "But today, we finish this. No matter what." When the doors opened, the courtroom filled like a theater before its last act. Every bench was packed, reporters, families, curious citizens, and Adil's silent army of followers. Adil himself entered with the swagger of a man who refused to accept defeat. But his eyes, hard, restless, betrayed the storm inside him. He didn't smile today. The judge banged his gavel. "This court will hear final statements." The defense began. Malik's voice was smooth, but cracks trembled beneath the surface. He dismissed the video evidence as fabricated, claimed the files were manipulated, screamed about conspiracies. He tried to shift blame, to point fingers at anyone but his client. But the courtroom was restless, unconvinced. Then Mahira stood. Her black scarf framed her face, her eyes blazing with conviction. She carried no papers, no props, only the truth. Her voice rang through the chamber like steel wrapped in velvet. "My lord, my fight has never been just about me. It is about every voice silenced by fear, every life destroyed because one man thought he was above the law. You saw him confess in his own words. You saw him bribe with your own eyes. How much more blood must we spill before we call truth what it is?" The gallery was silent now, hanging on her every word. Mr. Adil Khan built his empire on corruption, intimidation, and arrogance. He thought the law was his servant. But today, we prove it is not his servant, it is his master. She turned, her gaze piercing Adil like an arrow. And no man, no matter his wealth or power, is greater than justice. Adil shot to his feet, face red with rage. "Lies. All of it lies. I own this city. I own." "Sit down, Mr. Khan," the judge thundered. But Adil didn't sit. His mask ripped away, he pounded the table with his fists. "You think this will stop me? You think a court can cage me? I have men outside who will burn this city before they let you take me." Gasps ripped through the courtroom. The guards surged forward, hands on their weapons. And then, the heavy doors burst open. Police officers stormed in, armed and commanding. The inspector at the lead raised his voice, "Your Honor, the men Mr. Adil Khan hired have been arrested outside with weapons. We have confessions. They were here to silence the advocate." The courtroom froze. All eyes turned to Adil. His face drained of color. His last defense crumbled before everyone. The judge's gavel struck like thunder. "Enough.
This court finds Mr. Adil Khan guilty of corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to murder. Effective immediately, he is sentenced to life imprisonment.
The room exploded in sound, reporters shouting, people cheering, others crying in shock.
Adil roared like a cornered beast, struggling against the guards who cuffed his wrists.
His voice broke with fury.
This isn't over, Mahera. You hear me? This isn't.
But the words died as he was dragged from the room, his empire shattered, his arrogance broken.
Mahera sat down, her body trembling.
For the first time in months, the weight on her chest eased.
Saira clutched her hand, sobbing with relief.
Asim whispered, "We did it, Baji."
"You did it."
The judge looked at her with rare softness.
"Advocate Mahera, this court commends your courage. Justice has been served."
Later, outside the courthouse, rain poured harder, washing the city clean. Reporters still swarmed, but their questions were filled with admiration now, not doubt.
Mahera gave only one statement.
This was never about victory.
It was about truth.
Let it be known, no man's power is greater than justice. The moral of her story was written not in books, but in the hearts of everyone who had watched her fight. Evil may rise high, but truth, once given light, will never bow.
And for the first time in so long, Mahera allowed herself a deep breath. The war was over. Justice had won.